Let's get right into it. Number 12. The year without a summer. Picture this. It's June. Birds should be chirping, crops should be growing, and you should be out sweating in the fields like a proper 19th century peasant. But nope, instead, there's snow in July, frost in August, and your cows are looking at you like, bro, where's the grass? Welcome to 1816, aka the year without a summer. Spoiler, it sucked. What happened was Mount Tambora, a volcano in Indonesia, decided to go absolutely nuclear in 1815. It blasted so much ash and sulfur into the atmosphere that the planet basically pulled the curtains shut. Sunlight couldn't get through, temperatures dropped, and the world went into panic mode. Crops failed everywhere, from Europe to North America to Asia, leading to food shortages, riots, and the kind of eat rats and leather shoes for dinner improvisations that make history class depressing. But here's the weird twist. This cold, gloomy nightmare gave us things like Frankenstein and Dracula. Mary Shelley was stuck indoors during the endless gray skies, so she started writing ghost stories. Boom, Gothic horror was born. Meanwhile, people were forced to innovate farming and global food storage just to survive. So yeah, a volcanic apocalypse gave us horror novels and modern agricultural science. Silver linings, right? Unless you were the guy starving in 1816, then not so much. Number 11. The Black Death's weird perks. Imagine your neighbor coughing once and you just start digging his grave. That was Europe in the 14th century when the Black Death killed up to half the population. Like, entire towns just yeeted out of existence. Here's the thing, though, as horrifying as it was, the plague rewired society in bizarre ways. With so many people gone, labor suddenly became valuable. You couldn't just toss peasants around anymore. Workers could demand better wages, more land, and sometimes even basic human rights. Crazy, right? You had to lose half the population before landlords thought, maybe don't treat these guys like walking fertilizer bags. Even weirder, the Black Death reshaped human biology. Geneticists today think some survivors had mutations in their immune systems that helped them resist the plague. Fast forward to modern times, those same genes may affect how we deal with diseases like HIV. So yeah, your ancestors might have lived because they rolled a lucky DNA dice during the deadliest pandemic in history. The irony? The plague made life better for the survivors if you didn't, die horribly covered in boils first. Evolution. It giveth, it taketh, and it has a messed up sense of humor. Number 10. The fire that invented cities. Imagine your kitchen catches fire, but instead of just losing a few cabinets, your entire city goes up in flames. That was London in 1666. The Great Fire started in a bakery, spread like a gossip rumor, and torched most of the city within days. Now, fire is terrifying. It eats everything. Houses, businesses, churches, probably your stash of secret beer barrels. But here's the kicker. After the smoke cleared, London rebuilt smarter. Wooden tinderbox houses? Gone. Stone and brick construction? Streets got wider, fire codes got stricter, and the city finally realized that cramming everything together like a medieval game of Jenga was a bad idea. Even diseases took a hit. The Great Fire conveniently burned down a lot of the rat-infested, plague-breeding neighborhoods, which may have helped end outbreaks of the bubonic plague. Who knew the solution to centuries of pestilence was basically, have a massive barbecue accident? It's a disaster that literally roasted the old city alive but gave birth to the foundations of modern urban planning. So the next time you see a fire drill sign at work, just thank a very unlucky 17th century baker. Number 9. The Ice Age that never ended. You've probably heard of the Ice Age, saber-toothed tigers, mammoths, people wearing way too much fur. But here's a fun one. We're actually still in an ice age, technically speaking. The Earth has been cycling through freezing and thawing phases for millions of years. And one of those mini-freeze episodes, called the Younger Dryas, nearly wrecked human civilization before it even started. Around 12,000 years ago, the planet was warming up nicely, humans were inventing farming, and things were looking cozy. Then bam, temperatures dropped hard, almost overnight, like Earth suddenly forgot to pay the heating bill. crops failed, animals died, and early humans had to backtrack from agriculture to survival mode hunting. But here's where it gets interesting. This disaster may have forced humans to become more inventive. Farming had to adapt, storage techniques improved, and social cooperation became survival 101. Some scientists argue that without the younger dryas messing everything up, humans might never have developed the resilience and systems that fueled actual civilizations. So yeah, we can thank a freak cold snap for pushing us out of our prehistoric comfort zone. Next time your Wi-Fi goes down for 5 minutes, just remember, our ancestors survived a global deep freeze without TikTok. Legends. Number 8. Krakatoa's sonic boom. Okay, so imagine the loudest thing you've ever heard. Maybe a jet engine, maybe your upstairs neighbor dropping a bowling ball at 3 a.m. Now multiply that by 1,000 and you're still not even close to the Krakatoa eruption in 1883. This volcanic tantrum was so loud, people heard it nearly 3,000 miles away. That's like sneezing in New York and someone in London yelling, "Bless you." But the sound wasn't even the worst part. Krakatoa unleashed tsunamis, destroyed entire islands, and killed over 36,000 people. The blast sent ash high into the atmosphere, lowering global temperatures for years. Sunsets around the world turned blood red, the kind of ominous sky that makes you think, yup, this is the end. Even Edvard Munch said the apocalyptic colors inspired his painting The Scream. So technically, one of the most famous pieces of art in history is just climate disaster fan art. Yet again, humans adapted. The global cooling and crop failures sparked serious international talks about food reserves, agriculture strategies, and, fun fact, inspired early versions of disaster communication networks. The world basically realized, maybe we should start checking on each other when half the sky explodes. Humanity, always late to the party, but at least it shows up eventually. Number 7. The Dust Bowl Diet Plan. Picture your lungs filling with dirt every time you breathe. That was the American Midwest in the 1930s, when poor farming practices met a decade-long drought. The result? The Dust Bowl, giant walls of black dust swallowing entire towns like the planet itself decided to cosplay as a vacuum cleaner. People literally put wet cloths over their faces just to survive indoors. Crops failed, livestock suffocated, and families abandoned their farms in droves. If you've ever heard the phrase, "Okie," that's where it comes from, migrants fleeing to places like California, where they discovered fruit trees and judgmental locals. But here's the wild twist. The Dust Bowl disaster forced the U.S. to actually get serious about soil conservation. Farmers started rotating crops, planting windbreaks, and learning not to treat dirt like an infinite resource. Out of literal choking clouds of misery, modern agricultural science was born. So while the Dust Bowl made life feel like living inside a broken vacuum bag, it also saved future generations from repeating the same mistakes. Kind of like nature slapping humanity with a big dusty, "Do better, idiot" sticker. Number 6. The Day the Earth Shook Sideways. San Francisco, 1906. The ground shakes, buildings collapse, and the city basically decides to remix itself into a pile of rubble. The earthquake was bad enough, but then came the fires, massive, uncontrollable infernos that burned for days. Nearly 80% of the city was destroyed. And if you thought your landlord was bad now, imagine trying to negotiate rent while the building is literally sliding off its foundation. But out of the chaos came some strangely positive outcomes. The quake highlighted just how fragile modern cities were, and it inspired major advances in seismology and engineering. Reinforced concrete, flexible building designs, and earthquake drills? Yeah, you can thank San Francisco for that. It also pushed urban planning into the modern age, proving you can't just stack houses on shaky ground and hope for the best. The best part? Insurance companies tried to weasel out of paying for quake damage by saying, technically, it was fire that ruined your house, not the earthquake. Classic loophole nonsense. People fought back, policies changed, and disaster insurance as we know it was born. So the next time you see fine print in your home insurance, remember, it all started with a city literally falling apart. Number 5. Pompeii's Frozen Scream. You know it's a bad day when your whole city is buried alive under a mountain's mood swing. Pompeii, 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupts and covers the place in ash so fast that people were frozen mid-action, eating lunch, running, or probably yelling "OSH" before becoming part of the world's creepiest time capsule. What's fascinating isn't just the tragedy, but what it left behind. Pompeii gave us a perfect snapshot of Roman daily life, from graffiti on walls to fast food-style street vendors. Archaeologists basically got a free, walk-through tour of an ancient city, complete with body casts of people in their final moments. Morbid? Invaluable to history? Also yes. Here's the kicker. The disaster also influenced how we understand volcanology. For centuries, people didn't even realize volcanoes could do this level of damage. Pompeii became the cautionary tale, inspiring modern disaster preparedness and early warning systems. So history doesn't repeat itself every time a mountain gets indigestion. It's tragic, it's haunting, and it's the only reason we know Romans loved drawing very inappropriate graffiti. Turns out, disaster isn't just a killer, it's also the best historian we've ever had. Number 4. The flood that erased a continent. Imagine waking up one morning, stretching, yawning, and noticing that half your neighborhood is underwater. Now scale that up to oops, we just lost an entire land bridge. About 8,000 years ago, the last ice age melted just enough ice to flood the area we now call the Black Sea. Before that, it was a freshwater lake, and the land around it was home to thousands of early farmers. Then the Mediterranean came crashing through like a busted water pipe, raising sea levels so fast that whole villages were swallowed up. This event is thought by some scientists to be the inspiration for flood myths, like Noah's Ark or the Epic of Gilgamesh. Ancient people weren't being dramatic when they said, "The water rose and everything died." That was just their Yelp review of reality. The impact? Massive. People were displaced on a scale never seen before. Entire populations had to migrate, mix with strangers, and adapt to new environments. The flood didn't just wipe out a chunk of land, it reshaped human culture, languages, and trade routes. Basically, climate change did an early reset on human society. So yeah, if you've ever heard your grandparents rant about how hard it was to move houses, just remind them, at least they didn't lose their entire continent to a megaflood. Perspective. Number 3. The Tunguska Space Punch. 1908, Siberia. A giant explosion flattens 80 million trees, leaving a blast zone the size of a major city. No crater, no meteorite, just boom. To this day, scientists think it was a space rock or comet fragment that exploded in the atmosphere, basically uppercutting the Earth without ever touching the ground. And here's the scary part. If that had happened over, say, London or New York instead of a remote forest, we'd be talking about one of the deadliest events in human history. Instead, it just scared the absolute hell out of reindeer herders and created enough conspiracy theories to keep Reddit happy for centuries. The lesson? Humanity suddenly realized, oh crap, space can kill us randomly. Tunguska kicked off early interest in tracking near-Earth objects. Those giant rocks silently floating around waiting to ruin our whole planet's vibe. Now we have NASA running planetary defense programs, asteroid tracking telescopes, and even sci-fi level plans to deflect space rocks. So the next time you watch a disaster movie where Bruce Willis saves the planet by drilling into an asteroid, just remember, the only reason those plots exist is because Siberia got sucker punched by space one random Tuesday. Number 2. The pandemic that never left. We love to act like modern pandemics are something new, but nope. The 1918 flu killed more people than World War I. Soldiers came home, hugged their families, sneezed in their faces, and boom, global infection. The flu didn't just knock people out, it hit the young and healthy hardest, turning lungs into fluid-filled nightmares. But here's the twist, it forced the world to level up on public health. Cities created health departments, doctors finally admitted, hey, maybe germs are real, and governments realized mass communication during crises is kind of important. The flu also set the stage for modern vaccines and the idea that pandemics weren't just random acts of God but preventable disasters if we actually prepared. The tragic irony? The 1918 flu didn't fully disappear. Parts of its genetic code live on in modern influenza strains. So every time you get the flu today, you're basically being haunted by the ghost of 1918. Congratulations, your seasonal sniffles have a terrifying great-grandparent. Number 1. The day the sky fell. Let's go all the way back 66 million years ago, when dinosaurs were vibing, eating leaves, stomping around, basically running the planet. Then a giant asteroid showed up and said, "Not on my watch." The Chicxulub impact blasted Earth so hard it triggered firestorms, tsunamis, earthquakes, and enough dust to block out sunlight for years. Basically, the dinosaurs' lease on Earth got terminated overnight. Here's the plot twist: that apocalypse is the only reason you exist. With the dinosaurs gone, mammals had the chance to take over, evolve, and eventually start doing dumb things like inventing TikTok. In other words, our entire species owes its existence to one random space rock playing whack-a-mole with Earth's biodiversity. Scientists even study the Chicxulub event today to understand what might happen if another big rock comes our way. Spoiler: the Earth will probably survive, but humanity? Not so much. Which is why NASA's planetary defense projects exist. They're basically saying, we'd prefer not to repeat the dinosaur experiment. So yeah, every time you look up at the night sky, just remember, one cosmic game of dodgeball created humans. Thanks, asteroid. Sorry, dinos. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.